Coming up on this Friday edition of Daybreak, Korea says it deeply regrets remarks made by Japan's top government spokesman, in which he denied his country's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. North Korea will hold working-level Red Cross talks with Japan next week in northeastern China. Officials from the two countries' foreign ministries are also expected to join the meeting. Plus, the death toll following the explosion at an apartment block in New York City has risen to 7. 74 people were also left injured. Daybreak begins now. Thank you very much for joining us. To all our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Friday, March 14th here in Seoul. You're watching Daybreak, and I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning: the Korean government has expressed its deep regret over highly offensive and historically inaccurate remarks made by Japan's top government spokesman. Earlier this week, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga denied Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. Our foreign affairs correspondent Hwang Sang-hee starts us off.
South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs slammed Japan on Thursday for its latest offensive remarks about the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women.
Japan is inflicting another wound on the surviving victims of sexual enslavement by denying its military's direct involvement, which it had previously acknowledged in the Kono Statement.
The Kono Statement is a landmark apology issued by Japan in 1993 to the 200,000 or so women, mostly Korean, who were forced into sexual slavery during the Second World War. Tokyo has been backtracking on that apology in recent months by calling into question the validity of testimony given by Korean women that established the basis of the statement. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said Wednesday at a press briefing that there was no evidence that Japan forced the recruitment of women. The comments came on the same day the two neighbors were holding their first high-level talks in 8 months, which ended without results. Speculation leading up to the talks was that Japan would propose a summit with South Korea on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague later this month. More than a year into office now, President Park Geun-hye has yet to sit down with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. President Park has said she would not meet with a leader who fails to acknowledge his country's historical wrongdoings.
The South Korean government believes it is important to engage in talks when the two leaders can reach productive outcomes rather than holding talks for talk's sake.
Seoul's foreign ministry says that Japan must first take sincere steps to settle the history issues in order to hold productive talks with South Korea. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
North Korea has agreed to hold a second round of Red Cross talks with Japan next week in the northern Chinese city of Shenyang. Japan's public broadcaster NHK reports that both countries will be sending government representatives to the two-day meeting that starts next Wednesday. They're expected to follow up on progress made in the first round of talks earlier this month, where North Korea agreed to cooperate in repatriating the remains of Japanese who died around the end of World War II in what is now North Korea. There is speculation the Red Cross meetings will lead to formal bilateral talks between the two governments. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's aunt, Kim Kyung-hee, is believed to have either been removed from the country's parliament or to have stepped down of her own free will. This despite the country's recent rubber stamp elections, where Kim, the wife of recently executed Jang Song-taek, was listed as a member of the Supreme People's Assembly. Officials from South Korea's intelligence agency said Thursday that the Kim who is listed appears to be a person with the same name who was also present in previous elections that Kim represented North Pyeongan-bukdo province, the same constituency that Kim Kyung-hee was elected to represent in this year's election. Officials also do not exclude the chance that Kim Young-nam, chairman of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly, may have also been eliminated. South Korea will sign a contract before the year is out to overhaul its Patriot missile system to prevent possible North Korean missile strikes from reaching their targets. Shin Se-min reports.
South Korea will sign a deal to upgrade its Korea air and missile defense system by the end of this year. Officials at the Defense Acquisition Program Administration said Wednesday that it will upgrade the country's current PAC-2 air and missile defense system by incorporating PAC-3 missiles into it. The Defense Ministry has set aside some $1.4 billion for the adoption of the new defense system, scheduled to go through an evaluation process in July. The new system will finally be implemented in 2016.
We expect to give more people the opportunity to work, as most of the operations to improve performance will take place domestically.
The current PAC-2 air defense system has the capability to destroy an enemy missile target or aircraft by exploding near it, but has a low interception rate. However, the advanced PAC-3 system will be able to hit the target directly, colliding with the missile's warhead and therefore increasing its accuracy. The move to enhance Korea's air defense system has North Korea and its thousands of short-range missiles in mind. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
The final decision on next month's key interest rate will likely fall on the shoulders of Bank of Korea Governor nominee Lee Ju-yeol. Hwang Ji-hye has more on some of the challenges facing the veteran central bank official, whose confirmation hearing is slated for next week.
Wrapping up his final monetary policy meeting on Thursday, Bank of Korea Governor Kim Jung-soo said he was successful during his 4-year term in giving the central bank back to the people. He added he had done his best under some difficult circumstances.
People normally say that the past 4 years represent the first and the biggest financial crisis in 100 years. The global financial market changed very rapidly.
While there has been criticism over a lack of communication with the market during his term, analysts rated Governor Kim's monetary policies as above average. The man who is now likely to be taking over the burden is Lee Ju-yeol, a veteran central bank official who's been tapped as the next governor. Experts say the main challenges for Lee will be how to cope with external risks stemming from the U.S. Federal Reserve's stimulus tapering and how to coordinate with the government to revitalize the domestic economy. They add that the new top central banker will feel a heavy responsibility as the circumstances at home and abroad are currently at odds.
The new governor should not focus on short-term goals. Blindlessly following the government's drive to boost the local economy should also be avoided. The central bank should show leadership as a pillar of monetary policies, while communicating with the market.
Before taking office in April, nominee Lee will have to go through a parliamentary confirmation hearing next Wednesday. The National Assembly, however, does not have the power to veto Lee's appointment. Analysts say the first hearing in the Bank of Korea's 60-year history is expected to go smoothly, given that the central bank veteran has gone through similar procedures before while holding senior positions in the central bank. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
The death toll from the building explosion in New York City has risen to 7 as rescuers continue to search for survivors. The exact cause has not yet been determined, but authorities suspect a gas leak was to blame. Kwon So-ah reports.
New York City's mayor has called the deadly explosion a tragedy of the worst kind.
A police spokesperson confirmed Thursday that the death toll from the blast has risen to 7. Over 70 people were also left injured after the 2 buildings collapsed in the city's East Harlem neighborhood. Nearby structures were badly damaged by what witnesses say was a massive explosion.
It blew out some of our windows, like in the back of the building. The whole courtyard had glass in it, and like my apartment shook.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio spoke at an emergency press conference.
There was a major explosion that destroyed 2 buildings. Explosion was based on a gas leak. The impact affected buildings around the 2 that were destroyed. Very heavy impact on the surrounding buildings. A heavy fire has ensued as well.
A resident in an adjacent building reported smelling gas just 15 minutes prior to the blast. Other people in the neighborhood have also told reporters they had smelled a gas-like odor since the day before. Dozens of firefighters remain on site searching for any survivors who might be trapped under the debris. De Blasio praised the city's fire department for its quick response, especially as there was no indication in time to save people. President Barack Obama has sent his condolences to the victims' families. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The annual session of China's top legislature came to a close on Thursday, with various government bodies outlining how they'll be carrying out wide-ranging reforms, from fighting corruption and chronic pollution to the challenges facing the Chinese economy. The nation's premier laid out Beijing's goals in a closing news conference. Our Ji Myung-gil reports.
The nearly 3,000 delegates of the National People's Congress ended their 10-day annual session this Thursday. In a press conference to close out the NPC, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said this year's event was successful in defining major missions and setting specific goals. They included fighting corruption, setting a target for economic growth, and cutting down on the nation's chronic pollution problem. On corruption, Li said there will be zero tolerance for corrupt behavior or corrupt officials, and that those who are found guilty of violating the laws of the country will be punished to the full extent of the law. On the government's growth forecast of 7.5%, Li said China had the capabilities to ensure that economic growth will stay in a reasonable range this year, while also acknowledging the severe challenges facing the economy, namely downward pressure. Last year, China's growth rate settled at a pace of 7.7%. Li also outlined measures the NPC laid out for tackling pollution. They included shutting down 50,000 small coal-fired furnaces, reducing sulfur and nitrogen emissions from coal-burning power plants, removing old high-emission cars from roads, and promoting cleaner diesel-fueled vehicles. The Chinese premier also used the opportunity to speak about missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, calling on all relevant parties to enhance coordination to ensure that the plane is located as quickly as possible. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
The government and the Korean Medical Association, who are locked in a dispute over the government's plans to reform the medical sector, may begin talks as early as this Friday on calling off a planned doctors' strike. The Ministry of Health and Welfare said Thursday that the government and the KMA are currently in the process of mediating schedules for negotiations. This comes after Prime Minister Jung Hong-won proposed talks to find a compromise by March 20th in order to avoid a full 6-day strike by KMA doctors, which was planned to begin on the 24th. The Medical Association began its strike earlier this week with a 1-day walkout in protest at government plans to introduce a telemedicine system and set up for-profit subsidiaries. Now, Korean officials have confirmed yet another outbreak of avian influenza, bird flu, in a southern Seoul suburb. The Animal and Plant Quarantine Agency confirmed Thursday that a dead bean goose found in the city of Gwacheon in Gyeonggi-do province was infected with the H5N8 strain of the bird flu. If confirmed to be highly pathogenic, access within 10 kilometers of the area will be restricted, which includes southern parts of the Seoul metro area. The city has banned the movement of poultry in the area, while officials are stepping up quarantine measures and disinfection procedures are also underway. Meanwhile, Seoul Zoo, which is less than 2 kilometers away from where the dead goose was found, has decided to close its doors for the time being. Now, the world's largest furniture retailer is coming to town. Ikea is scheduled to open its first store in Korea later this year. And to give locals a taste of what to expect, the Swedish furniture giant has opened up a showroom. Julian reports.
Famous for its blue and yellow supersized stores and build-it-yourself products, Ikea will open its first store in Seoul by the end of this year. Korean consumers got an early glimpse at the Swedish-based company's simple and low-priced line of furniture at a special showroom that opened this week.
I'm very excited because we get to see many different designs and can purchase them at cheaper prices.
The marketing manager for Ikea Korea says the company has worked hard to tailor to the needs and preferences of the local population.
It's very much to understand more the market, so we have done a lot of research to understand life at home, what are the dreams and needs for the many people, and then of course we will provide solutions that fits the many dreams for people in Korea.
Ikea Korea is scheduled to open up its first branch in Gwangmyeong-si in the southwest of Seoul by the end of this year, and purchased land in Goyang-si northwest of Seoul last year, where it plans to open up its second. The imminent arrival of the global furniture giant has certainly caught the attention of local furniture companies, prompting them to overhaul business strategies.
We're unveiling a lineup of premium furniture. We changed the furniture on display to more high-quality items, and we're also providing top-notch customer service. So we feel we have a good shot at winning over customers.
The nation's top furniture brands also plan to boost the number of items sold through offline channels and in online malls to extend their reach to customers. Yurian, Arirang News.
Good day, I'm Eunice Kim, and here are your headlines from around the world. We begin with continuing coverage on the missing jetliner Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. The White House has announced that a new search area may be opened in the Indian Ocean based on some, quote, new information that was not specified during the news briefing. White House spokesman Jay Carney said the information was not necessarily conclusive and that the U.S. was consulting with international partners on how to proceed. The development occurs after the Malaysia's transportation minister rejected a Wall Street Journal report released Thursday, which said the jetliner could have kept flying for 4 hours after its last contact with air traffic control, citing U.S. investigators and officials. He also said Vietnamese and Chinese search teams failed to find debris where Chinese satellite photographs had shown 3 large floating objects in the South China Sea. The minister added Chinese authorities later said releasing those images was a mistake. Ukraine's interim Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk is at the United Nations this Friday morning, where the Security Council is mulling a resolution that would affirm Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity ahead of Crimea's referendum on Sunday. Earlier, German Chancellor Angela Merkel issued a strongly worded warning at Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying there would be a catastrophe if Russia continued its course, as neighbors of Russia would be threatened and could spurn massive political and economic damage to Russia. But no sign of change of course in the Crimea, as Russia launched a new military exercises Thursday along its border with Ukraine. A ceasefire has been declared in Gaza, according to an Islamic Jihad leader who also said Egypt was instrumental in brokering the deal. A spokesman for Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu had no comment on the announcement. A flare-up of rockets had pounded the region after an escalation of tensions over the past 2 days. The Islamic Jihad sent 60 rockets towards southern Israel, to which the Israeli military reacted with 29 airstrikes and tank fire at militant targets in Gaza, the heaviest exchange in nearly 2 years. There are no reports of casualties so far. And in the United Kingdom, court proceedings reveal that Princess Diana had handed her royal phone book to a top newspaper before her death to, quote, take on her then-husband, Prince Charles. Former News of the World editor Clive Goodman testified that he received the book from her in 1992, explaining that the princess was looking for an ally to help her show the bitter situation she was in with the Prince of Wales. Goodman is on trial for paying for royal phone books, a charge which he has denied.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off in Formula One racing, as the 2014 Formula One season is set to begin this weekend in Australia. Now, with the Australian Grand Prix kicking off the new season of Formula One racing, all eyes will be on Red Bull Racing Sebastian Vettel, who's won 4 straight Formula One titles and will be going after his 5th. And of course, with the new season, fans will be introduced to brand new regulations, which will introduce 1.6-liter turbocharged V6 engines, a first since 1988 that turbos were used in the racing. And now moving over to the NFL, where the free agency market is on fire after Thursday, after 2 big names were scooped up, and the Denver Broncos were involved in both signings. Now, first off, the now former Dallas Cowboys defensive end DeMarcus Ware, who's the Cowboys' career sack leader, left to Denver on a 3-year deal that will pay him $30 million. And while their defense got the boost they needed, their quarterback Peyton Manning lost his top target in Eric Decker, who signed with the New York Jets for a 5-year, $36.25 million deal as the NFL FA market continues to remain red hot. And back here in the nation, let's take a look at the Seoul SK Knights take on the Goyang Orions in Game 1 of the first-round playoff series in the KBL. Of course, going into the game here, the SK Knights take a slim 17-16 lead after the first quarter before they blow it up in the second quarter, outscoring the Orions 31-15 as they take a 48-31 lead going into halftime. The Orion starts rallying back in the third quarter, but the rally is cut short as Kim Sun-young puts up 19 points in the game as SK takes Game 1, 84-73. And finishing things off in the V-League, where Daejeon KGC beat the Korea Expressway in straight sets 3-0 over on the women's side. Meanwhile, with Samsung Hwanja Blue Fangs taking on Russian Cash Vespit, let's take a look at the highlights. Now, with the Blue Fangs already clinching the league title, they take it a bit easy until Russian Cash starts dominating them on the court, taking the first set 25-23. Samsung Hwanja decides to turn it up a notch as they take the next 2 sets before Russian Cash bounces back and controls the defense, with Kang Young-jun putting up 33 points on the night. The Vespits take the next 2 sets and the match 3-2. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great weekend, everyone, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
It's chilly this morning. Morning lows have dropped to minus side again in some regions, including here in Seoul. So it's a cold start to the day, and it's going to be a breezy and windy afternoon as the spring winds will continue to sweep the country. And right now we are looking at patches of clouds passing by, but as the day goes on, we could finally see some sun today. So it should be a good day to spend some outdoor, but be sure to dress warmly as high temperatures for today will be similar to what we had yesterday, but a lot colder morning lows. Morning lows in Seoul and Daegu starting out at -1, but afternoon highs in both regions and Busan will rise to 9, while Gwangju should top out at 8 this afternoon. Now for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will climb up to 9, while the top temperature on Mount Keungang will be quite cold at -4. Well, that's all for me at this hour, and back to you, Mark, in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jian, for the weather there. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in about 30 minutes' time, and we'll be back on Monday. Until then, goodbye.